Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah shiur. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn the halachas of the Daled Minim. We'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Kuf Chav Gimel Amid Aleph, and we're going to start two new Simanim today. We're going to begin on the top of Kuf Chav Gimel Amid Aleph with Siman Taf Reish Nun, shiur Hadas Va'arava, the minimum shiur of the hadasim, the aravos, and the lulav. Interesting that the Mechaber didn't mention the lulav in the name of the Siman. I have a theory as to why, but nevertheless, the Mechaber only says shiur hadas va'arava ubay beis seifim, and here we have two seifim. Now, this Siman is relatively short. It's a little bit complex. Really, it's just a question of mathematics. I'm going to give a hakdama outside that really is going to cover Sif Aleph, and it will just make it a lot easier to read and understand Sif Aleph inside. If you take a look at the very beginning of Sif Aleph, the Mechaber tells us, shiur hadas va'arava shlosha tvachim. The minimum length of the hadasim and the aravos are 3 tvachim each. So the hadasim have to be at least 3 tvachim long, the aravos have to be at least 3 tvachim long, and that measurement we're going to see is the measurement of the branch, the twig, not the leaves. So, in order to measure this properly, we take the arava. At the bottom, we measure the arava from the lowest leaves. So, if the branch is sticking out another 6 inches, but there are no leaves, we don't count that. We count from where there are leaves. So that's where we start counting, and we go up to the end of the twig. So if the leaves protrude above the twig, that doesn't count. We need 3 tvachim of twig. That's by the hadasim and the aravos. And then the Mechaber says, V'shidroi shalulav arba'a tvachim. The shedra, the spine of the lulav, has to be at least 4 tvachim tall. I don't know if this lulav that I have here is still usable to see anything. This, by the way, is a lulav hayavesh. At this point, you could actually see that the lulav is turning white. So if you are wondering what a lulav hayavesh looks like when it's white, this is already turning white. It's very stiff. It's not nifrach b'tzipirin. If I press it with my nail, it's not going to crumble, but this is already turning white. But we know that there's the shedra. I'll bring it up to the camera. Turn off the light. I think that'll help. Okay, there's the shedra. There's the spine. Now, the spine ends near the top where you cease to see a spine. You only have leaves. So it's the shedra of the lulav, the spine, that has to be at least 4 tvachim tall. The leaves that protrude along the top beyond the length of the shedra don't count towards the 4 tvachim. So what do we see here so far? We see that we have to have hadasim and aravos that are at least 3 tvachim tall, and we have to have a lulav that is 4 tvachim tall. The shedra of the lulav has to be 1 tefach taller than the hadasim and the aravos. Okay, now, what gets a little bit complex is we're going to have 3 different opinions how exactly we measure these tefachim. What kind of tefachim do we use? What does that mean? Well, we have basically 2 different types of tefachim because we have basically 2 different types of amas. We have a large amma, which is really the typical amma. A typical amma is an amma bas shisha tefachim, an amma that's comprised of 6 tefachim. And a standard tefach is comprised of 4 gudlim. It's a gudel? A gudel is the width of the thumb at the joint of the thumb. That's the widest part of the thumb. That's a gudel. So again, a typical amma is an amma bas shisha tvachim. That's an amma comprised of 6 tvachim. And a typical tefach is a tefach comprised of 4 gudlim. 6 times 4 is 24. So a typical amma would give you 24 gudlim. Then there's another amma. There's a smaller amma, an amma ketana. An amma ketana is an amma bas chamisha tvachim. It's an amma that's only comprised of 5 typical tvachim. So, an amma bas chamisha tvachim, instead of yielding 24 gudlim, an amma bas chamisha tvachim is 20 gudlim. 5 times 4 is 20 gudlim. So far, we got this very easy. We have the typical amma, the larger amma, which is 24 gudlim. We have a smaller amma, which is 20 gudlim. Now, in the context of halacha, sometimes what you find, and we're going to find that here in this siman, sometimes we use the smaller amma, the amma bas chamisha tvachim, but the same way we reduce the amma by a sixth, right? Because the typical amma is bas shisha tvachim, it's 6 tvachim. To get the smaller amma, we reduce it by a sixth, and we get an amma bas chamisha tvachim, right? So we also take the tvachim that the smaller amma is comprised of, and we reduce the tvachim as well. How do we do that? Instead of saying that the smaller amma is an amma bas chamisha tvachim, we say that the smaller amma is also comprised of 6 tvachim, but we reduce the size of the individual tvachim by a sixth. So what does that mean? We said that a typical tefach is made up out of 4 gudlim, right? That's why the amma bas shisha tvachim is 24 gudlim. Now let's take the amma bas chamisha tvachim, and instead of making it an amma bas chamisha tvachim and doing 5 times 4, each tefach is 4 gudlim, we're going to instead take the amma bas chamisha tvachim, which is 20 gudlim, but we're going to divide it into 6 equal parts, so that it still is 6 tvachim, but we're going to reduce the size of each tefach by a sixth, so that instead of a tefach being 4 gudlim, a tefach is 3 1/3 gudlim. Now that we did that, we could say like this. We have 2 different ammas. We have the typical amma, which is 6 4 gudel tvachim, so that gives you 24 gudlim, right? Or we can have this amma that is made out of 6 small tvachim. Each one of those tvachim, instead of being 4 gudlim, is 3 1/3 gudlim. So again, we have 20 gudlim, but they're small. They're 3 1/3 gudlim. Each tefach is 3 1/3 gudlim instead of being 4 gudlim. Now, we're going to have over here 3 different shitas. How do we measure the 3 tvachim of the hadasim and the 4 tvachim of the lulav? The first shita is going to say that we measure everything using the small amma. And if we measure everything using the small amma, so the hadasim and the aravos, right? We said the hadasim and the aravos have to be 3 tvachim. If we're going to use the small amma and the small gudlim, so we do 3 times 3 1/3, right? 3 tvachim, each tefach is 3 1/3 gudlim, right? So we take 3 times 3 1/3. 3 times 3 1/3 yields 10. So you want to know how many gudlim the hadasim and the aravos have to be? The hadasim and the aravos have to be 10 gudlim. That's 3 tvachim if we're using the amma bas shisha bas chamisha tvachim. We're using the small amma, so we're taking 3 times 3 1/3 is 10 gudlim. How long does the lulav have to be? 1 tefach longer. And again, we're using the small tefach. We're using the tefach that's only 3 1/3 gudlim. So we have 10 gudlim, we add 3 1/3, it's 13 1/3. So the first shita is very, very simple. The first shita holds that how do we measure the 3 tvachim of the hadasim and the aravos and the 4 tvachim of the lulav? We measure it using the amma kitana. We measure it using the small amma. The small amma is comprised out of 6 small tvachim. Each one of those small tvachim is 3 1/3 gudlim. So the hadasim and the aravos are 3 times 3 1/3. That equals 10 gudlim. The lulav is another tefach, another 3 1/3, so it's 13 1/3 gudlim. Very simple. The third shita that the Shulchan Aruch is going to bring down is also very simple. The third shita says we're not using we're not using small amos, we're using typical amos. A typical amma is 6 full-size tvachim. 6 tvachim, each tefach is 4 gudlim. If a tefach is 4 gudlim, hadasim and aravos are 3 tvachim each. 3 times 4 is 12. How long are the hadasim and aravos? 12 gudlim. If the lulav has to be 4 tvachim, fine. 4 times 4 is 16 gudlim. So the third shita is also very, very simple. The third shita says, hadasim and aravos, 3 tvachim. 3 tvachim, a tefach is 4 gudlim. 3 times 4 is 12. The lulav is 4 tvachim. 4 tvachim, each tefach is 4 gudlim. 4 times 4 is 16. So lulav 16 gudlim, hadasim and aravos 12 gudlim. So far very simple. The first shita goes consistently with small abbas, small tvachim. The third shita goes consistently with a full-sized amma and full-sized tvachim. Then we have the middle shita. The middle shita is a very interesting shita. The middle shita says we actually use a combination of small tvachim and big tvachim. How so? The hadasim and the aravos, we go with an amma ketana. With the hadasim and the aravos, we say 3 tvachim, 3 times 3 1/3. 3 times 3 1/3, like we said, is 10 gudlim. So according to the middle shita, the hadasim and aravos are 10 gudlim, just like the first shita. Small amma, small tvachim. The lulav is a mix. The first 3 tvachim of the lulav, we measure the same way as we measure the 3 tvachim and the hadasim and the aravos. We use a small amma and small tvachim. Therefore, the first 3 tvachim of the lulav is 3 times 3 1/3 is 10 gudlim. Now we need 1 tefach where the lulav goes beyond the hadasim and the aravos. That tefach is a full-size tefach. That tefach is 4 gudlim. Thus, the lulav is 14 gudlim. 10 is the first 3 tvachim, is 3 times 3 1/3 is 10. And then the fourth tefach is a full 4 gudlim to give you 14 gudlim. So those are the 3 shitas that the mechaber is going to bring down. I gave you the basics of the mathematics. Now let's learn inside. Let's do Sif Aleph. Says the mechaber. Shiur hadas v'arava, the minimum size of the hadasim and aravos are shloisha tvachim. The shidra lulav, and the shedra, the spine of the lulav arba tvachim, has to be 4 tvachim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Aleph. Shiur hadas v'arava shloisha tvachim. V'em ha'olin shalohem yotzin lamaylo min ha'etz. As I pointed out to you in the beginning, the Mishnah Berurah says that this is the measurement of the twig. If the leaves of the hadasim or the aravos extend upwards beyond the eitz, beyond the twig itself, that doesn't count. Tzarech sheyeh be'etzem ha'etz shir zeh. He brings down from the Ritva that the eitz, the twig itself, has to have the minimum shear of 3 tvachim. Ice cotton bays, shidroi shalulav. Oh, we didn't do that yet. Let's go weiter in the mechaber. So the hadasim and the aravos 3 tvachim, the shedra of the lulav arba tvachim. Continues the mechaber on the top line. Why? Kedei sheyeh shedroi shalulav yotzei min hahadas tefach. The shedra of the lulav has to extend beyond the height of the hadasim by a tefach. Why does the mechaber mention only the hadasim if the same applies to the arava? We have the same length. The hadasim and the aravos are the same length. They're both 3 tvachim. So if the shedra of the lulav is extending a tefach beyond the height of the hadasim, it's also going to extend a tefach beyond the height of the aravos. Simply, I think the reason is because we're going to learn that you're supposed to elevate the hadasim a little bit over the height of the haravos. So if you look at the height of the 3 minim, you're going to have the tallest is going to be the lulav, and the shedra of the lulav has to extend at least a tefach beyond the height of the next highest min, which is the hadasim, and then the aravos are slightly lower, even though the minimum length is the same, but it's positioned a little bit lower. So kedei sheyeh shedroi shalulav yotzei min hadas tefach, says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Bays, shedroi shalulav, Again, the same way we see by the hadasim and the aravos, that the leaves that extend above the twig do not count to this minimum height, the same applies to the lulav. When we say that the lulav has to be 4 tfachim tall, we're not counting the leaves that extend at the top of the lulav beyond the end of the shedra, where the shedra becomes ordinary leaves. We need the shedra, the spine of the lulav, has to have a minimum length of 4 tfachim. As far as the length of the leaves, we don't have a shiur to the lulav, how long the leaves have to be. Do the leaves have to extend a minimum height beyond the end of the shedra? That we have no shiur. Okay, so far very straightforward. Now let's go to the second line of the Mechaber, right by the Ois Cut and Gimel for the Mishnah Berurah, where it starts getting a little complex, but I already gave you the complexities. Says the Mechaber, how do we measure these amos and these tvachim? Says the Mechaber, ba'ama bas chamisha tvachim. We use a small amma. And remember, this is the first opinion that the Mechaber is giving. We use a small amma. What is that? That's an amma bas chamisha tvachim. Which kind of tvachim? Full-size tvachim. If you're making the small amma, if you're going to divide the small amma into 5 equal parts, that's an amma that's comprised of 5 full-size tvachim. 5 4 gudel tvachim. So 5 times 4 equals 20 gudlim, right? But asay oisa shisha. But we're going to take this amma bas chamisha tvachim and we're going to divide it into 6 equal parts. Now, if you divide it into 6 equal parts, then each one of those tvachim, you're now creating compressed tvachim. You're now making small tvachim. These small tvachim are not going to be 4 gudlim each. They're going to be 3 1/3 each. 3 1/3 times 6 is 20. So what are we doing? We're taking a small amma. Small amma is 20 gudlim, and we're dividing it into 6 equal parts, and we're creating 6 small tvachim. Each one of those tvachim is going to be 3 1/3 gudlim instead of being 4 gudlim. So again, ba'ama bas chamisha tvachim, we take the small amma, which is an amma comprised of 5 full-size tvachim, 5 times 4, that's 20 gudlim, asay oisa shisha, divided into 6 parts. If you divide it into 6 parts, you're making 6 small tvachim. Each one is 3 1/3 gudlim. Tsei mehem shloisha lahadas. You need 3 of those small tvachim. You need 3 of them for the hadasim and the aravos. Okay, 3 times 3 1/3 is 10. That's 10 gudlim. Nimtza shiur hadas va'arava tvachayim umechza shehem asara gudlim. Comes out that the hadasim and the aravos, and this is where he wrote it in a confusing way. It comes out that the hadasim and the aravos are 2.5 full-size tvachim. They're 2.5 4 gudel tvachim. Or they're also 3 small tvachim. 3 times 3 1/3. Shehem asara gudlim. Each way you compute it, you end up with 10 gudlim. The point over here is, we're using an amma bas chamisha tvachim. An amma bas chamisha tvachim is 20 gudlim, right? But we're dividing it into 6. And we're taking 3 of those tvachim, 3 times 3 1/3, and we're applying it to the hadasim and the aravos. That's 20 gudlim. For some reason, the Mechaber decided to tell you, even though he just told you that you should split the amma into 6 equal parts, right? But then he writes, shiur hadas va'arava tfachayu mumechza. It's 2.5 tvachim, but it's not 2.5 of the small tvachim. It's 2.5 of the full-size tvachim. It's 2.5 tvachim, each tefach being 4 gudlim. 2.5 times 4 is 10. It's also, but what do you mean? We said the shiur of the hadasim and the aravos are 3 tvachim. Yeah, 3 compressed tvachim. 3 tvachim of 3 1/3 gudlim. 3 times 3 1/3 is 10. Either way, it's the same. It's 10 gudlim. Okay, so that's the hadasim and the aravos at 10 gudlim. The shiur shedrei lulav, and the minimum size of the shedra of the lulav is shloisha asar gudlim, 13 gudlim, ushlish gudel, and a third of a gudel, 13 and a third. How do we get 13 and a third? Very simple, because the lulav has to be 4 tvachim. 4 times 3 and a third is 13 and a third. So it's really very, very simple. The reason the hadasim and the aravos are 10 gudlim is because it's 3 times 3 and a third. It's 3 compressed tvachim. 3 times 3 and a third is 10. The lulav is 4 times 3 and a third because it's 4 compressed tvachim. So that yields 13 and a third gudlim. Okay, that's the first opinion. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and gimel. Ba'ama bas chamisha tvachim. We're going to calculate the size of the hadasim and the aravos and the size of the lulav using a small amma on amma bas chamisha tvachim. Ha-mechaber mivar dvarav. The mechaber is explaining his words. She'ain tzarech shleisha tvachim beinanim. He's explaining that we're not using 3 typical standard issue tvachim, shehem shisha ba'ama, where each tefach is a sixth of a regular amma, meaning 4 gudlim. El anu loichin amma ketana. We're using a small amma. Shehi bas chamisha tvachim beinanim. A small amma is comprised of 5 standard tvachim. Big amma, 6 standard tvachim. Standard tefach, 4 gudlim. Standard amma, 6 times 4, 24 gudlim. That's not what we're using. We're using an amma ketana. The amma ketana is 5 standard issue tvachim. 5 times 4 is 20 gudlim. But we're going to take the 20 gudel amma and we're going to make 6 tvachim out of it. We're going to make 6 compressed tvachim, 6 small tvachim. Half of that, 3 compressed tvachim, who share hadas v'aravos, they share the hadasim and aravos. V'nimtzid comes out, sheshloisha tvachim ha'elu, these 3 tvachim, who rak tvachim u'mechza beinanim. 3 compressed tvachim, i.e. 10 gudlim, equals 2.5 standard issue tvachim. They're both 10 gudlim. It's either 2.5 times 4, or it's 3 times 3 and a third. Either one gives you 10. Gudlim, dal gudlim, what's a gudel? Pirish, roichav gudel shel adam beinani, the width of a thumb of an average person. Sheyesh b'chol tefach arba mehem, every tefach, standard issue tefach, has 4 gudlim. Oif cut and hay, shloisha asar gudlim ushlish gudel. Using these computations, you come out with a lulav that's 13 and a third gudlim long. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah in a little bit of a funny way. The tefach shel lulav hanoisaf hanal, because according to this first shita of the mechaber, all of the tvachim that we use here are compressed tvachim. The 3 tvachim and hadasim and aravos are compressed tvachim. 3 and a third gudlim. 3 times 3 and a third equals 10. The first 3 tvachim of the lulav, compressed tvachim. 3 times 3 and a third, 10 gudlim. The extra tefach, the 4th tefach of the lulav, also a compressed tefach. Also 3 and a third gudlim. 10 plus 3 and a third is 13 and a third. Hugam came tefach katod l'deyazu. According to this opinion, the 4th tefach of the lulav is also a compressed tefach. Shahu, now he defines the compressed tefach. He does it in a very interesting way. Shahu pachos mi tefach beinani. The compressed tefach is smaller than a typical tefach. Shemaxik ba'alma arba gudlim. The typical standard issue tefach is 4 gudlim. The compressed tefach is smaller than the typical tefach. By how much? Kishir shtus. It's reduced by a 6th. Shehu shnei shlishay gudlim. That means you're taking out 2/3 of a gudel. How do you get that number 2 and a third? 2/3. The shneim asar shlishay gudel who are ba gudlim. Because a typical tefach is 4 gudlim, right? Now, let's take 4 gudlim and let's reduce 4 gudlim to thirds of a gudel, right? So each gudel has 3/3. 3 times 4 equals 12. So 4 gudlim is 12 thirds of gudlim. Reduce that by 6. If you're reducing that by a 6th, you're taking out 2/3. 2/3 is a 6th of 12 thirds. So that's what we're doing. We're reducing this by a sixth. We reduced the amma by a sixth, right? Standard amma bas shisha tvachim. Small amma bas chamisha tvachim. So we reduced the amma by a sixth. Now we're reducing the individual tvachim because we want our small amma to also have 6 tvachim. How do we do that? If we reduce the amma by a sixth, now if we still want to have 6 tvachim, we have to reduce the 6 tvachim by a sixth. So we have to take out 2/3 of a gudel. So now every gudel is 3 1/3. Okay. V'nimtza shetefach hazeh machzik rak shloisha gudlin u'shlish. So each tefach is now only 3 1/3. We're reducing each tefach by a sixth, right? So 3 1/3. V'masara gudlin anal hu b'sach hakol shloisha asa gudlin u'shlish. So now, sach hakol on the lulav, we have 13 1/3 gudlin. Okay. So that was the first opinion. Now let's go to the second opinion. The second opinion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 lines down in the mechaber, a little bit before the middle of the line. Second opinion. The second opinion was the complicated one. The second opinion is the opinion that uses a mix of small amas and big amas. V'yesh mi sha'omer, there's a Ramban. The Ramban says, sheshir shedrei shalulav arba asar gudlim. That the lulav is 14 gudlim. How do you arrive at 14 gudlim? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Vav. The first thing you have to know is that the Yesh Misha Omer, the second opinion, only argues on the first opinion in the context of the lulav. He doesn't argue on the first opinion in the context of the hadasim and the aravos. He agrees that the hadasim and the aravos are 10 gudlim each. Why? Because he agrees that we use a small amma and compressed tvachim, so it's 3 times 3 1/3, which is 10 gudlim. So how does he arrive at 14 gudlim for the lulav? Explains the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Vav. Svira lay, this opinion the Ramban holds, the tefach hanoisef balulav, that the additional tefach of the lulav, that means the 4th tefach of the lulav, the first 3 compressed tvachim, 3 times 3 1/3 is 10 gudlim. But the 4th tefach of the lulav, the tefach hanoisef, the additional tefach of the lulav, above and beyond the length of the hadasim and the aravos, hu tefach beinini. That has to be a typical tefach. Shemachzik arba gudlin. That has to be a 4 gudel tefach. V'nimtzeh shebasach hakol hu arba asa gudlin. So now you have a lulav that equals 14 gudlim. The first 3 tvachim are 10 gudlim, 3 times 3 1/3. The 4th one is 4 gudlim. So 4 plus 10 is 14 gudlim. Now we go to the final opinion here in Sif Aleph. Says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber, 4 lines down near the end of the line. V'yesh omrim, and then there's the Rif and the Rambam, the Bala Itter. V'yesh omrim, sheshir hadas v'arava, shnei masar gudlim. This opinion argues on both of the earlier opinions. This shita holds you use typical amas and typical tvachim. So if a hadas and a rava have to be 3 tvachim, that's 3 tvachim. What kind of tvachim? Full-size tvachim. Arba gudlim each. 3 times 4 is 12. So the hadasim and the ravas have to be 12 gudlim. The shedrei shalulav, if the lulav has to be 4 tvachim, it's 4 times 4 is 16. Shishasa gudlim. And says the Ramah, v'chein nagin l'chatchila. L'chatchila, that's what we do. Of course, l'chatchila, we go with the biggest chumrah. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Zayin. V'yesh omrim sheshir svira lahu. These Rishonim hold the shloisha tvachim anal, that these 3 tvachim that we speak about for the hadasim and the aravos, v'chein tefach shalulav anal, and also the additional tefach, as well as the other tvachim of the lulav, who tvachim beinanim. These are typical tvachim. Shekol echad machzik arba gudlin. Typical standard issue tvachim of 4 gudlin each. And the Ramah said, l'chatchila, that's how we know it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ub'diyeved, dai alulav b'shloisha asa gudlin or shlish. B'diyeved, we could go with the first shita, 13 1/3 gudlim on the lulav, the hadas ba'arava ba'asara gudlim, and the hadasim and the aravas could be 10 gudlim. Upachas bizeh pasal afila b'diyeved, less than this would be pasal even b'diyeved, kol shiva siyamim, all 7 days, because that's the minimum share, that's the smallest kula that we had. Kasav b'Telas Yaakov, the Telas Yaakov writes, al pisoid, based on Kabbalah, yesh lital shedrasei shalulav klape panav, that the shedra of the lulav should be facing you. It's interesting how we have very often, we have a lot of these halachas that we all know since we're little kids, right? The shedra of the lulav is facing you. Everybody knows that. What's it based on? It's not a beferish halach anywhere. Here it is in the Mishnah Berurah. It's al pisoid. From the Sefer Telas Yaakov, al pisoid, al bi kapola. Yesh, that it should be that the shedra should be facing you. Upanei lulav klape chutz, and the other side faces away from you. V'hachi noihagin, and that is the way we are noyeg, that is brought down from the Pri Megadim. Okay, I hope that was clear. In all of this complication, what I neglected to give you is the measurements of the hadasim and the aravos and the lulav in contemporary measurements in inches. Mirz Hashem, I'll try to remember to give that to you in tomorrow's shir. Okay, now we go to Sif Beis. Sif Beis, says the Mechaber, we gave you so far the minimum share. How about a maximum share? Is there a maximum share? I remember many, many years ago, we were in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot. I was a bacher, and we got daled minim for the family. We picked up for my father, El Rishalom. We found a beauty of a lulav, but I never in my life saw a lulav that was that long. That lulav had to be 6 feet long. It was an impressive lulav. It was gorgeous. Straight like an arrow, tight, green, kulai sauce. It was totally closed. It's a gorgeous lulav. It was huge. Says the Mechaber, Ein lahem share l'mayla. There is no maximum share. The yesh mi shaymer, there are those that say, shafilu haisif barech hadas v'ha'arava kama, even if they're very, very, very long, tzarich sheyetze shidrei shalulav l'mayla mehem tefach. There's no maximum share, but the rule stays the same, which is, if you're going to have very long hadasim and aravos, the shedra of the lulav has to extend a tefach above the height of the hadasim and the aravos. There is no Mishnah Berurah on Sif Beis, so that's Siman Taf Reish Nun. Now we go to Siman Taf Reish Nun Aleph, which also is a little bit complex. I'm going to try to break it down. I'm going to break it down to its base components, and I'm not going to get into the complex machlokes rishonim that underlies the beginning of this siman. The truth is, some of you might remember it. I did go into depth in Siman Taf Reish Mem Vav when we were discussing the halachas of the aravos and the halacha of an arava the hadasim. When we spoke about the hadasim that are katum, the hadasim where the top is chopped off. If you want to take a look at it, go back to the shir in Siman Taf Reish Mem Vav that speaks about the hadasim that have their tops chopped off. We spent a little more time on the machlokes rishonim over there. I'm not going to go in depth over here, but what I will remind the olam is like this. We have a Mishnah on Lamed Daled Amid Beis. We have really what appears at face value to be a stira in two Mishnayos. We have one Mishnah that says that a hadas that's katum is possible. We have another Mishnah that says, where we have a shita of Reb Tarfon, who says that you use 3 aravos, and the 3 aravos can all say, hadasim. We have one Mishnah that says that the hadasim, a hadas that's katum, a hadas that has the top cut off is puzzle. Then we have another Mishnah where Reb Tarfon says that you take 3 hadasim, and all 3 hadasim could be katum. They're allowed to have their tops chopped off, and the Gemara says that we paskin like Reb Tarfon. So it seems to be a shita, to be a stira between these two mishnayos, and there's various ways in the Rishonim to be miyashiv, the stira, what the different mishnayos are talking about. But for our purposes here, in the Mishnah on Lamed Daled Amid Beis, we have 3 shitas. We have the shita of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says you take 3 hadasim, 2 aravos, 1 lulav, and 1 esrog. You have Reb Tarfon, who says that the 3 hadasim that you take, he says, afilu shloshtan ketumim. You take 3 hadasim, and even if the tops of the 3 hadasim are chopped off, it's still kosher. And the Gemara says that we pass it like Reb Tarfon. Then we have Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, nah, you take one lulav, one esrig, and the same way it's one lulav and one esrig, it's one hadas and one arava. So Rabbi Akiva says, you don't need 3 hadasim, you don't need 2 aravos. It's one hadas and one arava. And the most Rishonim seem to say, I'm sorry, it's a Gemara, it's not Rishonim. The Gemara says that the hadas, the one hadas that you take, it cannot be katan. So again, Rabbi Akiva says 1 hadas, but not katan. Rabbi Tarfon says 3 hadasim, afilu shloshtan ketumim, even if all 3 of them are chopped. Okay, now let's take a look here in Siman Taf Reish Nun Aleph. Netilas halulav u'berachasai, the proper way to take the arba minim and the bracha uboy tesvav seifim, and here we have 15 seifim. Sif Aleph says the Mechaber. Mitzvah arba minim, the mitzvah of the arba minim is sheyitar kol echad, that each individual has to take lulav echad, 1 lulav, shtei aravos, 2 aravos, u'shloisha hadasim, and 3 hadasim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katnal, sheyitar, says the Mishnah Berurah, Yom Tov Rishon, on the first day of Yom Tov. What do you do if you wake up on the first day of Yom Tov and you're not sure where you should go to daven? You personally do not have a set of daled minim, and daled minim are in short supply. Now you know if you go to Shul A, you know that somebody over there has a kosher set of daled minim, and you know you'll be able to make a bracha on daled minim. But you don't know if there's going to be a minyan. You don't know if you're going to be able to daven b'tzibur. If you go to Shul B, you know that they're going to have tefillah b'tzibur, but you don't know if they're going to have daled minim. What should you do? Says the Chavetz Chaim, B'Yom Tov Rishon, on the first day of Yom Tov, Yoser Tov Leilech Lamakom Sheyesh By Lulav Milelech Lamakom Mishem Espalalim. It's more important to go to a place where they have daled minim than it is to go to a place where they have a minyan and they're going to daven b'tzibur. The Lulav B'Yom Rishon Hi Daraisa. Because on the first day of Yom Tov, like we've said already so many times, the mitzvah of daled minim is a mitzvah sasei daraisa. So if you have a chance to be mekayim a mitzvah sasei daraisa, even if it's only a suffix, says the Chavetz Chaim, va'afilu lulav suffix, even if there's only a suffix, if that shul is going to have daled minim, im yasik sham v'letfila vaday. So now you have a choice. I could go to Shul A. Over there's at least a suffix. I might get daled minim, but no minyan. Or I could go to Shul B. Shul B, they zichah don't have daled minim, but I'll get a minyan. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you got to go to the place where there's a lulav, even if it's only a suffix, that there's going to be a lulav, because it's a daraisa. Suffix daraisa l'chumra. If there's even a suffix that you could be yotze the mitzvah daraisa, you got to go to where you might be able to be mekayim the mitzvah daraisa before you're going to go to be mekayim a mitzvah darabanan. But if Yom Tov Sheni, starting the second day of Yom Tov and on, now it's equal. Now, daled minim and tefillah, they're both darabanan. So then go to the place where there's a vaday darabanan, right? If there's only a suffix darabanan in one place, and there's a vaday darabanan in the other place, go to the vaday darabanan. Ois Cotton Bays, the Mechaber said that the mitzvah is that kol echad, each individual has to take daled minim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'lo she'echad yitel b'shvil kulam. There's no concept that one person should be moitzi the entire tzibur in taking the daled minim. Like, for example, by the mitzvah of shofar. What happens by the mitzvah of shofar? The Baal Tekeh gets up, he makes a bracha, everybody says amen, he blows the shofar. So it kind of looks like only the Baal Tekeh is doing the mitzvah, everybody else is being geitza, but we explained in Ilchah Shofar that that's not true. The mitzvah is not to blow the shofar. The mitzvah is to hear the shofar. So everybody's being mekayim the mitzvah. So is there like a concept by lulav, one person will get up, he'll take the daled minim, he'll be moitzi everybody in the bracha, he'll make the nanuim, everybody will stand there with kavana, and they'll all be yotze the mitzvah, says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Taking the daled minim is a mitzvah hasei shebagufay. It's like putting on tefillin. Somebody can't be moitzi you in putting on tefillin. He can be moitzi you in the bracha of tefillin, but he can't be moitzi you in putting on tefillin. You got to put tefillin on your own arm and on your own head. So too, you have to take the daled minim. Somebody else can't be moitzi you in taking the daled minim. But believe it or not, says the Mishnah Berurah, there was a pasuk that paskin that way. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there is no concept that one person should take the dalamina be mighty everybody. How do we know this? Because it says in the pasuk, ulekachtem, lashon rabim. It's written in the singular. V'loy lekachta. It doesn't say, and you should take, an individual, you in the singular. Lahira is to teach, sha'achiv al rabim, that the chiv is on the rabim. Now, some of the Rishonim, they wonder about this. This is actually brought down from a Gemara. This is Gemara in Sukkah, Mem Aleph Amid Beis. But some Rishonim, they wonder on this. Why would you even think that somebody could be mitzi you in taking the dalaminim? Like I just said, it's a mitzvah shabagufay. It's like tefillin. Why would you even have a havamin that somebody could be mitzi you? So some of the Rishonim say, if the pasuk would have said v'lo kachta, then we would have learned from the pasuk that it's a mitzvah asay, not on each individual. It's a mitzvah on the tzibur, that somebody from the tzibur should take the daled minim and be mitzi the tzibur. But it says v'lakachtem. It doesn't say v'lakachta. So l'hoyroi shachiv al arab. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, v'loimi bay b'yomtiv rishon. Certainly this is true on the first day when it's a daraisa. V'afilu b'shar yomim. It says the Chavetz Chaim, even the rest of yomtiv. B'yina l'kicha l'chal echad. Everybody has to take the daled minim on their own. V'loi k'moishe tziva echad. And not like one moira hara gave a psak. B'maisa, when there was one maisa, shaloi haya b'meis hakneses ela esrig echad, where there was a shul where they only had one esrig, and this Moira Hara said sheyikach hashliach tzibur avur kulam, that the shliach tzibur should be mitzi everybody by taking the daled minim, v'heim yishmu abracha v'yanu amen, and they should all listen to the bracha and say amen. No, that's wrong, and he brings this down from the Chuvas Chasam Sofer Chelik Archaim Siman Kuf Pei Beis. Ois Cotton Gimel, the Mechaber said you need 2 aravos. Not al bad echad shel arava. Let's say you only take one, so it's Gemara Lamed Beis. You're not yaitza. Tzarich lachzer v'lita l'levarich. Do over. If you only took one arava, you are not yaitza the mitzvah, and you got to do it over again with a bracha. Ice cotton dalid, and here's where we get a little complicated. Ushloisha hadasim. The Mechaber said you need 3 hadasim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, va'afilu shloshtan kitumim. Even if all 3 of the hadasim are kitumim, even if all 3 of them have their heads chopped off, all 3 of the hadasim, sheniktu b'roishan, you're still yoitza. Upachas b'shloisha, but if you take 3 hadasim, loy mahani, according to this opinion in the Mechaber, if you take less than 3 hadasim, you're not yoitza. Afilu loy hayu kitumim, even if they're perfect and their heads are not chopped off. What is this Mishnah Berurah based on? This Mishnah Berurah is based, and there's a nice chart Sion over here, Ice cut and Gimel, but this, I'm not going to read it inside. This Mishnah Berurah is based on a simple understanding of the sugya. I gave you 3 shittas in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yishmael said, you take 1 lulav, 1 esrig, 3 hadasim, and 2 aravos. Came along Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon said, yeah, 3 hadasim. Afilu shloshtam kitumim. Even if the heads of all 3 hadasim were chopped off. Most Rishonim understand Reb Tarfon very simple. They say like this. They say Reb Tarfon saw Reb Yishmael. Reb Yishmael said 1 lulav, 1 esrig, 3 hadasim, 2 aravos. Reb Tarfon didn't argue on Reb Yishmael. He said, yeah, no problem. But he added on a kula. His kula was afilu shloshtan kitumim. Yeah, you need 3 hadasim. But I have a new kula for you. My kula for you is, even if all 3 hadasim have their heads chopped off, it's still kosher. Now, I'll remind you now, why are hadasim kosher if they're kotum? Why are the hadasim different than the lulav and the arava? A lulav that has the top chopped off is possible. We had a whole machlokes, what does it mean that the top is chopped off? But everybody agrees if the top is chopped off, it's possible. Aravos, if the top is chopped off, it's possible. Hadasim, if the top is chopped off, it's kosher. The reason we saw in the Rishonim is because the hadasim are anaf eitz avos. The hadasim are plaited or braided where the leaves cover up the twig. Therefore, if the top of the twig is cut off, you don't even necessarily see it because the leaves cover it up and there's no lack of hadar. So again, a simple understanding of the sugya is we paskin like Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon agrees that you need 3 hadasim, thus 3 hadasim. But Reb Tarfon also says all 3 can have their heads chopped off. Afilu shloshtan ketumim. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says 3 hadasim. Yeah, it's Reb Tarfon. Va'afilu shloshtan ketumim sheniktimu roishan. Even if all 3 have their heads chopped off, no problem. Reb Tarfon. Upachos bishloisha, but if you have less than 3 hadasim, according to this opinion that the Mechaber is quoting, loy mahani afilu loy yiktumim. You're not yoitza even if they're perfect, because we paskin like Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon says you need 3. Less than 3, you're not yoitza. Okay, that was the Mechaber. Now let's go back into the first line of the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Taf Reish Nun Aleph here in Sif Aleph, and let's see what the Ramah says. The Ramah says, Uvamokam atchak, pressing circumstances, the leka hadas kosher, where you're having trouble getting kosher hadasim, sagile bechad deloy kotum. You could be yotza with 1 hadas, but a hadas that's not kotum. So, pressing circumstance, says the Ramah, you could be yotza with 1 and not kotum. So first the Mishnah Berurah says, Mishnah Berurah is cutting hay, Uvamakam atchak, L'chayra hainu kishein masigates alacherim. So first, Mishnah Berurah says, understand what this means. Makam atchak. Makam atchak doesn't only mean that you personally have a pressing circumstance that you weren't able to get more than 1 kosher hadas. No, it also means that nobody else has. If you can make a bracha on somebody else's complete set of dalaminim with 3 hadasim, no, use his. If you can get by somebody else, yikach mishalacherim, you should make a bracha on somebody else's. The B'Kurei Yaakov is mashma that you could be makel on this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, to him it seems you should not be makel only on from the second day of Yom Tov and on, not on the first day when the mitzvah is a daraisa. Ois cotton vav, sagile b'chad deloy kotum. The Ramah said, b'diavad, makam atchak, you could get away with 1 hadas that's not kotum. Now, the basis for that would seem to be the shita of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva argued on Reb Tarfon and Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said you need 3 hadasim. Reb Tarfon came along and said, yeah, 3 hadasim, afilu shloshtan ketumim. I'm makel over Rabbi Yishmael, even if all 3 of them have their heads chopped off, it's also good. Rabbi Akiva said, now 1 hadas, but not kotum. So we have the shita of Rabbi Akiva, 1 hadas that's not kotum. Rabbi Akiva is a das yachid. Rabbi Akiva is the only one who said 1 hadas. Not so simple, because there's another machlokes rishonim how to understand Reb Tarfon. The way we're understanding Reb Tarfon is that Reb Tarfon agreed with Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said 3 hadasim. Reb Tarfon agreed. Yeah, 3 hadasim. The only thing is Reb Tarfon added on a kula above and beyond Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said 3 hadasim. The implication is 3 perfect hadasim. Came along Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon said, I agree 3 hadasim, but I have a kula. They could be ketumim. Some Rishonim understand Reb Tarfon differently. Some Rishonim say no. Reb Tarfon didn't mean to agree with Rabbi Yishmael on the number of hadasim. Rabbi Yishmael said 3 hadasim. When Reb Tarfon reacted, Reb Tarfon, if you look in the Mishnah, Reb Tarfon did not say Gimel hadasim va'afilu shloshtan ketumim. He didn't say you need 3 hadasim and even if all 3 are kotum. No. All he said was afilu shloshtan ketumim. Even if all 3 of them are kotum. But he never said you need 3. So there are some Rishonim that understand that Reb Tarfon is the most kula dikashita in the Mishnah. Like this you learn that Rabbi Akiva, in a sense, is the most kula dikashita. Because Rabbi Yishmael said 3 perfect. Reb Tarfon said 3 even if they're kotum. Came along Rabbi Akiva said, now 1, you don't need 3. It can't be kotum, but only 1. Now some Rishonim say no. Reb Tarfon never agreed to 3. Reb Tarfon only meant to introduce the kula that the hadasim that you use could be kotum. But he doesn't agree with Rabbi Yishmael that you need 3. He agrees with Rabbi Akiva that you only need 1. Oh, so now who's the most kula dika opinion in the Mishnah? Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Yishmael holds 3 perfect. Rabbi Akiva holds 1 perfect. Rabbi Tarfon holds 1, even if it's katan. So now it comes out that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon both agree that you could be yotzei with 1. The only difference is that Rabbi Tarfon holds it could be katan, Rabbi Akiva holds not. Therefore, says the Ramah, in a makamat chak, you could be yotzei with 1, because that's Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, 1, but not katan. You have to take, because both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva hold that you can't have katan. It's only Rabbi Tarfon holds that you can have katan. So we go like the Rav, we go like Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, who both hold that it can't be katan, and we go like Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon, who both hold that you could be yotzei with 1. So b'makamat chak, you could be yotzei with 1, that's not katan. Cute, right? Now let's see, Mishnah Berurah got involved inside. Sagilei b'chad d'loi katam. V'ayin b'shari tshuva, says the Chavetz Chaim, you should look at the shari tshuva, b'shem tshuvas Dvar Shmuel, who says in the name of the Sefer Dvar Shmuel, shemitzadei, who leans, tzarech litloi b'loi bracha. That if you're going to take 1 that's not katam, you got to take it without a bracha. You can't make a bracha. Why can't you make a bracha? Because it's a suffix. You have a major machlokes rishonim over here. So it's a suffix. If it's a suffix rabbanan l'kula, suffix brachas l'hakol, you don't make a bracha. Achein, Prima Gadim, and Yeshuas Yaakov mashma, from the Prima Gadim and the Yeshuas Yaakov, it's mashma the Yuchal Avarich, that you could make a bracha. Why? Because they hold there are so many Rishonim that come out this way, it's not called a suffix. V'hine Amagid Avram Hevi b'Shem Ramban. Now we have even a more kula dikashita. V'hine Amagid Avram Hevi b'Shem Ramban, the Daitoi Da'afilu b'chad v'kotum yotzei. They say, the Ramban says, that you could be yotzei even with 1, and even if it's katan. The Kasav of Magen Avram, the Kedayu Lusbach Allah b'shasat chak. The Magen Avram says you could be yotzei with this Ramban b'shasat chak. V'inei bazeh b'vada yitlei b'lei bracha, but this certainly should only be done without a bracha. The bazeh gam das Yeshuas Yaakov shaloi levarich. Okay, I thought we might actually finish the page, but we're a little bit long. You know what? I'm going to go a little bit longer, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to catch up. These pages are all long. So we're going a little bit weiter. Okay. Let's go to Sif Beis. Bottom line in the Shulchan no, not Sif Beis. Let's keep on going in Sif Aleph. Bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch. U'mitzvah la'agdam b'kesher gomor. It's a mitzvah to be ma'aged, to tie together the lulav and the hadasim and the aravos b'kesher gomor, with a knot that's a kesher gomer. Tahainu, what does that mean, a kesher gomer? Shnei ksharim zeh al zeh, a double knot. Mishum noi, this is not a medina, this is not necessarily al pidin, it's a keli vanveyu, it's hidr mitzvah, it's noi. V'yachal la'ogdam b'min acher, but you don't have to use actually one of the minim, like we use a lulav leaf. You don't have to use a lulav leaf. You don't have to. Okay, let's take a look here now at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah is Zayin mitzvah la'agdam, da'af the kaimelon de'en mechuyev la'agdam, even though we paskim that there's no chiyev al pidin to tie them together. Al kol panim mitzvah yesh bazeh, it is a mitzvah to tie them together, mishum zeh keli va'anveyu. So it's an Indian of hidr mitzvah. It's called ches b'kesher gamor, v'loy ba'aniva, not with a simple bow. No, it has to be a kesher gamor. We know that an aniva, that a bow, is not considered a kesher gomer. How do we know? Because you're allowed to do it on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and there's no isser of kosher, there's no malacha of kosher. So that's the bar. That's how we know that it's not a kesher gomer. So if it's not a kesher gomer, you don't do it by the lulav and the hadasim and the aravos. V'aynu b'tshuvas algor ba'alcha shebetzaded, who says the mashenoigin ha'olam shaloi lases kesher. This, that the world is noyeg, that they don't actually tie the lulav and the hadasim and the aravos together. Rather, eloisin min ale lulav kimin beis yad. Rather, they make a keshel, right? They make like a handle for the dalid minim. They weave it out of the leaves of a lulav. These are our keshelach that people use. V'toichvin al lulav boy, and they stick the lulav into it, and then they stick the hadasim and the aravos in. Gam zeh b'klal kesher. The Sefer Agur Ba'alacha says that that's called a kesher, and this is the makar for the keshelach that we use, ayin, sham. I personally don't do this. I personally take a leaf from the lulav and I tie with a double knot. I tie the hadasim and the aravos together. That's a minig that some people have. Okay, it's cut and test. The Mechaber said that you could use a min acher. You actually don't have to use a lulav leaf or something from the aravos or something from the hadasim. You could use something else. Now, the Mishnah Berurah points out there are two possible problems that you might have thought there would be by using a min acher. So first of all, let's say you use a different min. Let's say you use something that grows from the ground. I don't know, you take, trying to think, you take the bark of some kind of a tree, or you take a leaf from another type of tree. Not a lulav, not hadasim, not aravos. You might think that there's a problem with Baal Tosef. Now suddenly you're not taking dalin minim, you're taking chamisha minim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, less by Mishal Baal Tosef. There's no possible problem here of Baal Tosef. Why? Because you're not being mekayim a mitzvah. There's no chiyuv to make the igud, to tie it, and therefore it's bottled to the whole dalin minim. If it would be a chiyuv that you have to tie it, so then it's part of the mitzvah. So that you're doing the mitzvah with a fifth min. Then you might have a problem of Baal Tosef. But over here, the igud is not part of the mitzvah. It's only hidur mitzvah. So it's batal gabi the mitzvah. It's not a fifth min. Umishum chatzitza dami leka. Then you might have thought maybe there's a chatzitza problem. Let's say I use a rubber band. Now when I'm holding the lulav and the esrog, there's something biyichaitzis between me and the minim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mishum chatzitza dami leka. There's no problem with chatzitza. Even though whatever it is that you're using is forming a chatzitza between your hand and the minim, it's not a problem. Why? Because if it's being done for noi, if it's being done for hidur mitzvah, that does not constitute a chatzitza. Again, it's bottled to what you're doing. See, if it's a leaf from the lulav, then the reason it's not a chatzitza is because min b'minoi einoi chaitzitz. If it's like min, it's not chaitzitz. But if it's a rubber band, it's min b'she'einoi minoi. It's still not a chatzitza because it's hidur mitzvah, and kol l'na'osai, anything that's for noi is bottled to the thing, and it's considered as if it's not even there. Okay, we'll stop over here with the top of Kuf Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The mitzvah of limud HaTorah should be banging against Klal Yisrael. We should, the Rebbeinu Shalom, the schus of limud HaTorah, should be banging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's for voice, Parnas, and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the B'yas Kal Tzedek, B'meher v'yameinu, Amen, be well.